Hey there, Mark Colgan from yellowo.co.uk here. First of all, thank you so much for being on this page. It makes me happy that you found your way here and that you're serious about implementing trigger-based prospecting in your outbound pipeline generation campaigns. So what I want to do is just walk through how to use this document. It's a version of the document I use with all my clients, but wanted to give it away for free so that it can hopefully help you out with your own trigger-based prospecting. So let me just zoom in a little bit. Obviously, this video I'm recording now will be in here. Just quickly touch upon the definitions of what intent data is, what signals are, and what triggers are. So intent data is essentially first-party data, which is data that you own from your website, from your product, any assets that you own where you're collecting data. So your CRM, for example, that's somewhere where you have first-party intent data, and you can obviously see things that are happening in your prospects' interactions with you and your company. When it comes to third party, this is where people own data elsewhere around the internet. So G2 and Capterra are great examples of third party intent data, which basically if somebody's looking for a HR onboarding tool, you may be able to get an alert and find out who that person is. That's the service that they offer. There's also lots of other sources. We'll go into that in a second. Then you have signals. These are actions that prospective buyers or prospects take that might indicate, so might be in the keyword here, that they will soon be in need of a solution like yours, or they're close to making a purchasing decision. So some signals can be used more for adding context rather than for actually triggering any outbound campaigns. And let's move into triggering now. So triggers essentially is the act of engaging with a prospect because of either intent data or signals. That'll make a little bit more sense when I explain it over here. So if I move over here, we've got the different types of intent data. Now, there's actually a lot more intent data and there's a lot more signals. These are just the most common ones. I'll share a link to a blog post with even more different options here. So intent data, as I mentioned, this is data that you own. So it's your website. When someone visits your resources page, your pricing page, the contact or demo form, it could be your deal room data, although that will be used later on in the sales process. It could be your marketing automation system where you've got form fills, gated content, and email marketing going out. It could be inviting people to webinars and seeing those people that are signing up to join that webinar. You've got product usage if you're a SaaS company, and then of course CRM data as well. Third party, as I mentioned, G2 G2, Capterra. If they've viewed ads, they've attended an event, maybe you've got some partners who share data with you as well, and of course industry publications too, or also collecting cookies and data for people. Then we get into signals, often referred to as triggers, but in my definition, signals are these things. So there's individual, account, and macro. On individual, this happens to the actual person, so they're new to their role or they just got promoted at their current company. They could be hiring in their team. It could be all sorts of engagement that they're doing on LinkedIn. If you're selling B2B, most of the people will be on LinkedIn. Or it could be in communities like Slack groups that they belong to as well. Maybe they spoke on a podcast or on a webinar, or they attended an event that you knew that they were attending, joined a community, attending the webinar, etc. These are some of the signals. Now, these don't mean that just because somebody attended a webinar doesn't mean that they need to buy your solution, but it does give you an indication that they are maybe problem aware, therefore looking for a solution. The account level, these are more common, quite easier to find. So if a company raised a round of funding, they've started using a new technology, mergers and acquisition activity, partnership announcements, relocation, product launches, there are a ton here. This video is not for me to go and explain what each one of these are. It's more just to explain what this area is. Then we've got macro, trends, analyst reports, regulation, world events. So these are all things that could signify that a prospect might be interested in working with you, whether you have a service or a solution, software solution, for example. What you need to think about is what is happening in my prospects' lives from an individual level and an account level before they need my sort of solution. To give a real life example, I ran an agency, we grew it from 0 to 22 people. When I had 3 people, I did not need any sort of HRIS system, HR information system, I think it's called. I didn't need to track when people were taking time off. I didn't need to track where we had our policies and everything, because everything was just handled in a Google Drive. Everything was handled via Slack or email. Not a problem. When I grew it to 20 people, 22 people, and then more complex questions started coming in, we definitely needed something which was a central database which people could put in their holiday. I can request it, or their manager could request it, and make my life a lot easier. The pain when I had 3 people just wasn't there. When I had 22 people, it definitely was there, and I was looking for a solution. And that story and that example really talks through the different levels in your prospect's journey. This is actually taken from a great book about, I'm going to forget it for this video, but apologies. We have prospects who are unaware, prospects who are problem aware, or the same prospect may be unaware. Then they go to, okay, I do have a problem, but I don't know how to solve it. When they understand how they can solve it, that they then become solution aware. And then once they become solution aware, so I need a HRIS system, then it's going into product aware, which is which HRIS system should I look for? Now, really important to note that a prospect can move across this journey very quickly. It could be in a matter of 15, 20 minutes. It could be weeks, months, years, depending on what you're selling, how expensive it is, how much of a huge problem it faces. That example, the HRIS, was more of a personal pain point of mine. It wasn't like business critical. It wasn't going to impact revenue. You could argue that I'd have happier team members and therefore they'd be more motivated. But in a short term, it wasn't going to impact revenue, but it was going to make things a lot more efficient for me and then free up my time to then go and focus on those higher revenue impacting activities. So what you should do is take the signals that you identify based on asking yourself the question of what's happening to my prospect before they need us, what's happening to their companies, what macro trends are happening that they need to be aware of. And then you need to use sticky notes if you're using Miro, put sticky notes for the intent data and the signals where they are in their customer journey. And this will help you start to think about, okay, what are the things that we should be looking for to trigger our outbound prospecting campaigns? And that's where we move on to step number 4. So there's 2 things you need to think about here is the engagement type and then the message type. So for an example, signal intent. Let me take that HRIS, and wasn't planning on using this as an example. This is completely off the cuff. That HRIS platform is a good trigger would be headcount growth over the last 6 months, 12 months. So if there's been an increase in headcount growth, maybe more than a certain percentage, so increased by 20%, especially if the company started off small, or we're hiring multiple roles. There's 2 different signals that we could look for to trigger our outbound. So the trigger condition will be found more than 4 open roles, if that's the trigger that we're picking here. And then the engagement type, we have to decide, are we just going to enroll this prospect into a sequence? Are we going to send a very personalized email? Are we going to call them? Are we going to send them direct mail, create a video and send a video to them as well? The engagement type is completely up to you. And again, depends on what you sell, how much it is, who you sell to, etc., and your product as well. And then you have the message type. So are we going to be direct with our message, or are we going to add value and try and nurture this prospect to make them an advocate of us for when they do need to make a decision? They come to us. So in this example of the HRIS, should have picked a better example, we would use a more direct approach because we know that the pain is more likely to be felt right now. And I did receive an email around this time, which is why this example came to mind, of a company who said, hey Mark, see that you're growing. Congrats on the growth. A little bit of a compliment, not trying too hard. And then it went on to say, I can imagine that, keeping up with all of the admin work, setting up all of the security, setting up their emails, their Slack access can be quite time consuming and takes you away from doing the things you should be doing. And I thought, great line. That's exactly what I'm thinking. And then they went in to tell me about their solution. And then they asked if I was interested in learning more, which I did reply to. In the end, it was too expensive for me. I think they should probably target companies who are a bit bigger. But that was a well-timed message where it was received very positively because it's almost like they're reading my mind. And that's what you can achieve when you use trigger-based prospecting campaigns. So that's an example of filling out that for one signal or piece of intent data. I go through with this table with my clients and we fill out all of the options. And sometimes we scratch some off that not all of them are going to be right. And then also we test some and we might find that actually this trigger just isn't landing, isn't resonating. Our hypothesis was off. Let's go back to the drawing board. It's an iterative process. The next steps, which is very hard for me to explain on this page for you, because it really depends on what signals and intent data you're looking for, your product, how much it is, who you sell to. But what you should do next from here is select the data sources for the intent data and the signals. integrate these data sources and enrich that data into your current outbound or your current tech stack, usually your CRM, your sales engagement tool, or your CDP if you're using one. Create engagement campaigns and workflows. So like draft out the campaign so that enroll into a sequence with a direct message, or maybe it's enroll into a sequence with 3 value add emails that get dripped out over 3, 4, 5 weeks. Get all that ready. And then you want to set up the trigger conditions. So like, how are we going to be notified when this information happens? How are we going to know which companies are hiring the more than 4 people in this geographic location? Which chief marketing officers have just started a new role? Which head of people have just started in a new role? So those are the trigger events. So when that happens, they automatically either get enrolled into a sequence, or a task is created for your assigned account executive or SDR so that they can work through the task to write that very personalized email, create the video, or whatever it is that you decide on. So you set up the trigger conditions and integrate that with your CRM, sales enablement tool, and then go live. And then of course, like anything in sales, test, iterate, see what's working, double down on what's working. If you need help with any of this, like hopefully this is self-explanatory and this video helps as well. But if you need any further help, just reach out to me, mark@yellowo.co.uk. All right, enjoy and speak to you soon.